Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Avery, and I am the Executive Director of Quanta Change. Thank you so much for joining me today. So today I want to talk about sleep. So how is that for you? Do you get enough sleep? Do you have optimal levels of sleep? Do you feel rested when you wake up? Or do you maybe have trouble getting to sleep or staying asleep or waking up too early? If so, we're going to talk about today what Quanta Change can help you address that can really get in the way of good sleep. And I've been finding that for myself and for many of my clients over the last 22 years. So we'll get into that. But first, before that, I wonder how much you know about sleep. If you really know that, maybe you do, that sleep is incredibly important, that when they say that sleep is the very best medicine, they're not kidding. That's not just a saying. That's actually physiologically true, because the deepest level of brainwave activity, the deepest level of sleep, is when you get the most human growth hormone release during the night or during the entire day. And so that's what actually physically repairs your cells, physically repairs your body. So sleep is incredibly important. It's really important to get enough sleep. So they've done plenty of studies over the years that say that really nearly all of us need somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of sleep a night. And even folks who they've included in their studies who came into the study saying, I thrive on 5 hours of sleep a night. And what they found is even those people will wake up after 5 hours and actually be impaired and not really realize it. So sleep, important. So let's talk a little bit more about what you can do on a practical level. And this isn't going to be an exhausting list, but there are lots of different elements, lots of different factors that go into good sleep. One of the things, if you have not been sleeping well, if you haven't looked it up, look up sleep hygiene. This includes things like going to sleep at the same time every night, sleeping in a dark, cool room, cutting off caffeine early enough in the day if you drink caffeine, limiting your alcohol intake, limiting your screen time at night, things like that. There are lots of them. Go look up the whole list and see if you can just cross all of those things off. There are other kind of medical, physiological issues that you can look up also, and speak with your physician about. Sleep apnea is certainly one. If you take stimulant medications for some reason, that can really get in the way of sleep. So maybe seeing if your doctor can make an adjustment there, but go talk to them and see if that's possible. And then there's one more thing that I'll touch on. Are you, like me, a big night owl? Or are you, like some of my good friends, a lark, a morning person? Are you pretty polarized like I am? Is your natural bedtime pretty late? Mine's around 1 a.m. That's when naturally I tend to fall asleep. Or are you someone who wakes up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 a.m. So that would suggest that you're pretty polarized. And some more recent research over the past few years has shown that if you're truly polarized like we are, either in either direction, that it's genetic, that you cannot change it, and that it causes incredible stress on your body to try and sleep outside that schedule. Maybe you're like me and you've tried it. I had to sleep outside my natural schedule for many decades, really, and I knew that there was never a day ever in my life that I woke up bright-eyed at any early morning hour, and maybe you can relate to that. So what they've said is that if at all possible, you should cater to that schedule. If you can work your life around that schedule, that is what you should try to do if you can. If you can't, I hear how difficult that is. I had to do it for many years. And so it's just one thing to keep in the background, see if that's something that you can work around a little bit if you're really polarized in that way. So let's get to, and that's not an exhaustive list, so definitely look into it. There's so many factors that go into sleep, but let's get into what what Quanta Change addresses that gets in the way of sleep. So maybe you've crossed all of those things that I just said off your list already. You're like, I got it together, cut the screens off, caffeine, alcohol, all that stuff, Sarah. I've eliminated all those problems. I'm still not sleeping well. So are you finding that it's hard to get to sleep at night because maybe your thoughts are racing, or you're worried about something, you're feeling some sort of general sense of anxiety that's sitting in the background? Maybe you're just feeling a bit on edge. Maybe there's something sitting in the background just kind of nagging at you that you can't quite put your finger on, but that's kind of keeping you alert. Or is that, or one of those factors waking you up in the middle of the night, in the early morning, too early, and you can't go back to sleep and you're not getting enough sleep? So I certainly can relate, and so can many of my clients over the years. So let's recognize that all of those things I kind of rattled off, we could put under the large umbrella of fear, worry, anxiety, and fear is something that's completely incompatible with sleep. That's because what fear does is it triggers this whole stress response, this physiological response in your endocrine system and your nervous system, that if you're in fear, if you're under threat, that it wakes you up, it keeps you alert to allow for, well, what we used to say, fight or flight. Now they've expanded the understanding of that to 4 factors. You might respond to fear by fighting, by fleeing, by freezing, kind of like a deer in the headlights, or like a rabbit, if you've ever seen a rabbit freeze and try to disappear by being immobile, or fawning. This is probably my biggest one. And I wonder if you can relate to this. If I'm really scared in a situation with other people, I will start to try and appease other people. I will try and make sure they're okay. What do they need? What do I need to keep them calm? For instance, lots of us who have childhood trauma from a parent or some other early caregiver, where that was the best way we could keep ourselves safe and keep things kind of quieted down and calmer, was to fawn over someone else. So maybe you can relate to those things. And so in order to do any of those, fight, flee, freeze, or fawn, you have to be awake and alert, right? And so, as you can see, that's completely incompatible with sleep. Now, in an evolutionary sense, if we go way back, let's say I'm a hunter-gatherer, I'm on the plains of Africa way back, and I just barely outran the water buffalo today and got to safety. Now, what's going to happen is I was given lots of resources in my body, in my nervous system, in my endocrine system to get away from that threat and get myself to safety. And then what happens with the nervous system naturally is that it calms back down, it shuts back off. You go back into a state where you can relax. What unfortunately, well, and let me say that maybe even then you would still do a bit of planning that night. Maybe you would sit around the fire and strategize with people about how you're going to outrun the water buffalo tomorrow, or if you're going to just hang up the spear and let Junior take over, whatever you're going to do to make sure that you don't end up in that situation again. But once you've figured that out, the threat's over, right? You can calm back down, you can rest easy, you can go on with your life. Here's the problem. So fear can be trapped inside of us. And when we're talking about anxiety or all of those other things that I listed, that's something you can't get away from, right? It's something that you can't shut the door on, roll the boulder down the hill, climb a tree. I wouldn't do well on the plains of Africa. I don't know how to get away from water buffaloes, clearly. But, whatever you would normally do to get away from the threat, if it's trapped inside of you, if it's the fear that's trapped inside, you can't get away from it. That is a problem, because as you can imagine, that can keep your physiological system on alert all the time. And that's really a problem, because it can get in the way of sleep, right? Okay, so what the core reason for that fear is something that Quanta Change calls learned distress. So learned distress is the feeling that you absorbed very early in life that there's something wrong with you being just the way that you are. And learned distress has two components to it. There's that basic icky awful feeling that there's something wrong with you, and then there's a survival mechanism that your sense of self developed very early in your life, again, to kind of help you deal with that awful feeling and help you fit well with the people around you. So if you were someone who part of your survival mechanism is that fawning, your brain developed that so that you could fit well with maybe one of your parents, an older sibling, other early caregivers of yours, so that you could stay safe. So either the learned distress itself or your survival mechanism in dealing with it can really be the trigger for this, for triggering fight or flight, for saying there's something wrong, I got to do something about it. It could be just this feeling there's something wrong with me. It could be the sense of the way I need to deal with that is to get everybody's approval, get them to like me. It could be I have to be more perfect all the time. It could be I have to get more done. I have to win at everything. How am I going to do that? So it can be any number of things that really triggers you to stay in that alert place. And that's what's getting in the way of sleep if you're having these troubles. So the good thing about this is that Quanta Change gives us a way to peel off layers of learned distress permanently. Because I know if you have trouble sleeping, sleeping, then it's just miserable, right? It's just really, it really gets in the way of everything. And so what Quanta Change was developed to do was get to your brain during sleep for a couple of reasons. So sleep is the time when your natural resistance to change that tries to protect your survival mechanism, it's when that resistance to change is shut down, so you can get to your sense of self that stores how you feel, that stores your learned distress, stores your survival mechanism. And sleep is also the time when that sense of self is getting recharged. So what Quanta Change does is allows you to tell your brain while you're asleep that you want to recharge not anymore with learned distress. You want to recharge with your core sense of well-being, this feeling at your center that you are just great, just being yourself. And so as your brain does that, it recharges with learned distress. It recharges with well-being instead of learned distress. That causes your sense of self to actually release layers of learned distress permanently. As you do that, you feel better any number of ways. Your life can work better if that's the case. But another thing that happens is as we peel off layers of learned distress, the intensity of that learned distress comes down. Do you know can you relate to what I'm talking about? Intensity, like on a scale of 1 to 10, that anxiety, the worry, the racing thoughts, the strategizing on how you're going to do something, on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe is that at, I don't know, an 11, maybe is it at a 15 for you? I remember those days. And I remember how much it got in the way of sleep for me. So I really can relate. So as that intensity comes down, it's kind of like Quanta Change allows you to turn the volume down on that learned distress radio, so that what used to be an 11 or a 15 comes down to an 8, and then it comes down to a 5, and then it comes down to such a low level that you think, is it even there? Can I even hear it anymore? Oh wait, maybe it's gone, or maybe it's just a whisper in the background instead of blaring at you at the highest level while you're trying to go to sleep. It's so frustrating, right? So that is something that I've really experienced over the years. Many of my clients have experienced this not everyone comes to me with sleep problems. We can work on many, many different issues, because what we're really working on with Quanta Change are these other ways in which you either feel bad about being yourself, or it feels like you have to be a certain way in order to control or cope with that icky feeling. So that's really what we're doing. We're working on the various issues that sort of intersect with that or come from that learned distress and your survival mechanism. So let me give you some examples. I'll just talk about my own example for myself. When I started Quanta Change, I was sleeping very poorly, and this had been for a number of years. And I could remember I started Quanta Change in my late 20s. I could remember going back into elementary school having trouble with sleep. And by my late 20s, I would sleep for a couple or 3 or 4 hours, wake up, be wide awake for several hours, maybe, hopefully, if I had time, be able to go back to sleep for a few hours. That was my sleep pattern most every night. It was not great. It was not helpful. So within a matter of weeks, I started to see that calm down. Within a matter of months, I was often sleeping through the night. So that was a huge change for me from going way back. And I have quite a number of clients who've come in with really pretty big sleep disturbances that see that calm down relatively quickly. Everybody's got a different schedule, a different timeline with Quanta Change, but generally we start to see some change happen early on. And in general, that's kind of what I see for people who have slept poorly. The trajectory is generally better sleep over time, more easily. And one thing I'll touch on is that I did have a client, this is total anecdote here, but she actually was using a sleep app that measured the optimal sleep cycle, told her, like, here, you are in an optimal sleep cycle or you're not. And she said, so Quanta Change, part of the process is sleeping with a recording playing a recording while you're sleeping. And she said that when she had the Quanta Change recording playing, her sleep app told her that her sleep cycle was optimal. And when she would some night not have the recording playing, her sleep cycle was not optimal. So it's just an interesting thing to know that that kind of optimization, even though she was generally sleeping well, but even with someone who was sleeping well, she was getting better sleep as a result of Quanta Change. So if this feels intriguing to you, if it even feels like, well, I really need to sleep better, I need to look at this. So let me tell you how you can do that, what the first step in that is, because I hope that you're feeling hopeful. I think better sleep really is possible, and you should look at every possible avenue for that because it's so important. But if you want to take a look at Quanta Change and how it might help you, the very first step is to find out which pattern of learned distress and survival mechanism you have. So, and the reason that you want to do this, there's 6 of these patterns. They are called the idealist, the perfectionist, the optimist, the caregiver, the defeatist, and the dictator, or benevolent dictator, sometimes we call that one. So these 6 patterns, the reason that you want to find out is not so that you can sort of dive deeper into where the negative stuff comes from, just so you can examine it better. I know if you've done lots and lots of years of therapy or other kinds of work on yourself, you may be really, really tired of examining the problem because you feel like you've examined it and that nothing's changed. And so the reason that you're going to find out which of these 6 patterns of learned distress you have is not just to stop there, but you're going to find out what it is you're going to be peeling away layers of through the Quanta Change process. So in order to do that, you're going to go to my website and take a free, in-depth, scientifically validated personality test that measures your learned distress and your survival mechanism. And I will graph that for you and send you a free report that shows you your pattern of learned distress and the way you've been surviving with it, and some of the ways that Quanta Change really can help you feel better and help your life work better, help bring the volume down on that learn to stress radio that maybe feels like it's screaming at you right now. What I can tell you is that what people say is, I feel better and I've never felt better before like this. Things are working better in a way they never have. And, you know, in the case of what we're talking about today in sleep, you know, I'm actually finally sleeping better and I feel so much better. So to do that, you're going to go to my website, Quanta Change, Quanta, change.com, and click on the free report button at the top and take that test, and I will send you your free report. So I hope that today you've gotten a little more information about what might be going on with your sleep and a little bit of insight if it's been kind of confounding to you, especially if you've kind of crossed all the other things off your list and you're still not sleeping well, thinking, what in the world can I do about this? Maybe you have a better idea of where that sleep problem is coming from and what might help with it. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope that you will join me again next Friday to find out another way in which Quanta Change really can help you feel good being you. Thank you so much.